I take this opportunity to introduce Commissioner Sheila Hilary Matindike, who is going to deliver the statement of the HRC on behalf of the chairperson, who unfortunately cannot be with us just now. We also have Commissioner Petunia Chiriseri, who is also going to participate and support in the delivery of the statement. Let me take the opportunity to introduce Dr. Makanasa Makonese, who is the Executive Secretary in the HRC, the head of the Secretariat. My name is Wengesai Eric Mukutiri. I'm the Deputy Executive Secretary responsible for programs. So without much ado, we know we have busy schedules. We'll get on with it.
Sorry, if the three ladies are going to talk, can they all be just around a bit because we can't see, you see what I'm saying? If that's all right. Thank you. And then the microphones are okay.
Okay, thank you for that. Is that okay now?
Perfect.
Okay. Just to say, the chairperson is not around because of ill health. He planned to be here, but he had to seek some medical attention. So sorry about that. We pass his regards to you. So I think we can now get on with it.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. The Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission's monitoring report in the aftermath of the 14th to 16th January 2019 stay away and subsequent disturbances. The mandate of the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission is to promote, protect, and enforce human rights and fundamental freedoms in Zimbabwe, and its establishment and functions are elaborated in sections 232, 233, 242, and 243 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. In line with its mandate, the Commission issued a press statement on the 16th of January 2019, highlighting the deteriorating economic and security situation in the country. Since then, the Commission has continued with its constitutional mandate to monitor the human rights situation in the country. This report is therefore an update following the monitoring undertaken from the 16th to the 21st of January 2019. Due to capacity and logistical constraints, the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission field monitoring teams only managed to visit places in and around Harare and Bulawayo. The Commission has now deployed teams to assess the human rights situation in other parts of the country. Specific areas that were visited during the just-ended monitoring missions include Kuwadzana, Glenview, Zivaresekwa, Highfield, Hopley, Sunningdale, Mbare, Mabvuku, Tafara, Epworth, Chitungwiza, Domboshawa, in and around Harare, and in Bulawayo, Entumbane, Emakandeni, Nkulumane, Chavalala, Cowdrey Park, Ngeta, and Popoma. In addition, the Commission monitored court proceedings at Mbare, Chitungwiza, and Harare, that is Rottenro Magistrates Courts, on bail applications by the alleged perpetrators of violence. Efforts to monitor and inspect places of detention, in particular Zimbabwe Republic Police, police cells at Harare Central Police Station, where detainees were kept, proved futile. Key findings and observations. Zimbabwe Republic Police. The Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission teams visited local police stations during the monitoring visits as the first port of call to get a brief on the situation. One of the Commission teams also sought to monitor and inspect the Harare Central Police Station and to interact with detained persons. Unfortunately, the police officers in charge did not seem to understand the mandate of the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, and after referring human rights officers to different police officials, denied them the relevant information or entry into the holding cells. Interaction with human rights lawyers representing the accused persons revealed that the accused persons had been held for periods exceeding 48 hours and that juveniles were being mixed with the adults in holding cells against international human rights law and standards. Unlike in other previous Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission engagements with the ZRP, the police officers were not forthcoming with information and referred all questions to the officer commanding Harare province, who over 2 days was said to be out of office in a series of meetings. Barricading of roads. Interviews with residents in and around Harare revealed that on the 14th of January 2019, around 8 and 9 a.m., several roads were barricaded by protesters using various objects. The protesters also burned tires on the roads to stop police vehicles from patrolling. The monitoring teams also observed evidence of barricades that had been mounted in the areas assessed, such as burnt tarmacs and concrete slabs and stones that had been moved to the sides of the roads. Such acts are not only unlawful, but a violation of several rights, including the right to freedom of movement, and as such are strongly condemned. Looting and damage to property. It was noted that a number of shops and properties were looted and damaged by protesters. At Makoni Police Station, the ZHRC noted that from the entrance and the guard rooms of the police station had been set on fire and the windows had been broken by protesters. At least 6 cars and 3 buses in the yard of the police station were burned. An additional 6 cars had been vandalized with most of the windscreens and windows shattered. The Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission monitors also visited Chitungwiza Town Center and Mabuku Complex, where it was noted that they had been looting at Choppy's supermarkets and other shops. There was clear evidence of looting and destruction of property as the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission observed broken window glasses and empty shops. At Mbodzi roundabout in Hockley, it was noted that there was torching of a police base, police vehicles, and a toll gate along Harare-Masvingo Road. Engagements conducted in Highfield at Machipisa Shopping Center revealed that protesters vandalized and looted from shopping markets, Pick n Pay Supermarket, Machipisa, and Zua Service Station. In Bulawayo, the commission observed that protesters vandalized and looted Choppies at Sohusile, 3 shops at Entumbane Complex, Total Service Station, Entumbane, and shops at Chicken Corner, Chabalala. The Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission takes this opportunity to condemn, in the strongest sense, these acts of vandalism and wanton violation of human rights. These are criminal acts that should never be experienced in a modern, democratic, and free society. The Commission therefore urges the law enforcement agents to properly investigate and bring to book all the criminal elements behind the violence and looting. Police and military patrols and arrests. Complainants and witnesses who spoke to the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission highlighted that armed soldiers and police visited their homes starting in the evening of Monday, 14 January 2019. They reported a heavy crackdown characterized by indiscriminate and severe beatings. The Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission also made home visits to some of those who were assaulted by the police and soldiers. It was reported that their modus operandi was the same in all the communities assessed by the Commission. They would arrive at people's houses at night or in the early hours of the day and ask all men to go outside and lie on the ground. They would then beat up all the men including boys as young as 11 years, and then asked them to run or arrest them. It was also noted that they targeted those who live in shared residences where there would be different families in one house with more than one male per house. They would also target men and boys who live in houses that are near areas where looting took place or where barricades were set up, and just make dragnet arrests without investigating. It was also stated that the police were letting loose their dogs to attack those whom they suspected to have caused mayhem. Some residents reported losing their valuables, such as cell phones, to the soldiers and the police during their searches of people's homes, and their property, such as doors and windows, were destroyed. Some members of the public highlighted that they were scared of reporting the cases to the police, as the nearby police stations were barricaded by the army, and they also feared that the police would victimize them. Others managed to make reports that were turned away. This implies that those requiring medical attention were or are unable to do so, as the medical facilities often request police reports before attending to them. This impacts on citizens' right to health. Further, a police report is required for many other purposes where a crime has allegedly been committed, for example, in order to make an insurance claim. Of concern is the fact that arresting officials in most cases came during the night and refused to identify themselves. The fact that the accused persons ended up in police custody means that they were officers on duty, acting unlawfully and without following due process. The Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission therefore calls upon authorities to address this gap before more harm is done to society by criminal elements taking advantage of such actions. In Bulawayo, due to heavy police and military presence in the areas visited, members of the public were uncomfortable speaking with the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission. Loss of life. Unfortunately, the disturbances have led to a number of deaths of civilians and a police officer. Whilst the Commission's investigations are still in progress, some facts have since been verified. For example, a 22-year-old young man, Tinashe Choto, died as a result of gunshots and was buried on Saturday, 19 January 2019. A post-mortem report read to family members by the authorities confirmed the cause of death as gunshots. Eyewitnesses confirmed that the young man was shot near Makoni police station during a face-off between the protesters and law enforcement agents. This is what incensed the protesters, leading to the attack of Makoni police station. At least 8 deaths have been reported to the Commission and mostly attributed to use of live ammunition. Whilst the police officers in charge were not forthcoming with their side of the story, the verified facts raise a lot of questions around the crowd control capacity of the law enforcement agents. They seem to resort to use of brute, excessive and disproportionate force in most circumstances, thereby causing avoidable loss of life and also worsening the situation. Targeting members of the opposition and civil society organizations, CSOs. The Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission noted from its media monitoring activities that complaints received that the government is blaming the opposition and civil society leaders for the violent protests. The Commission received and verified reports that around the country, some councillors and members of parliament of the MDC Alliance, as well as civil society leaders in suburbs where the most damage to property occurred, were either abducted or arrested from their homes. At one councillor's house, children, who included a 3-year-old girl, narrated what had happened to their father. The 3-year-old girl gave a vivid and moving account of the beatings and arrest of her father during the late hours of the night. Appearance in court and denial of bail. The Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission attended court hearings at Mbare, Chitungwiza, and Rottenrow Magistrates Court, and noted that a large number of accused persons were appearing before the magistrates at different times. Although the cases were all the same, it was noted that bail hearings were split, which process overwhelmed the judicial officers, the prosecution, and the lawyers representing the accused persons. It was noted that juveniles were also arrested, although they were eventually released into the custody of their parents by the courts. Some were said to have spent more than 48 hours in detention. The police, during the bail hearings in Chitungwiza, admitted that they had arrested primary school children, some as young as 11 years, although they were later released at the police stations. Almost all suspects above the age of 18 were denied bail on the basis of the nature of the offense and that some of the suspects were of no fixed abode. Accused persons that the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission saw appeared in the same clothing that they had been arrested in and were foul-smelling, indicating that they had not been given access to bathing facilities. Some of them were already coming from remand prison and had been in the same clothes for more than 4 days. Some of the suspects had visible injuries and had not received medical attention, including a suspect at the Mbare Magistrates Court who had a broken arm and a foot. Analysis of the situation. The findings reveal that in the aftermath of the 14th of January 2019 disturbances, armed and uniformed members of the Zimbabwe National Army and the Zimbabwe Republic Police instigated systematic torture. The torture was organized in that they targeted men who stay near areas where barricades had been placed and near areas that were torched by protesters or looters. They also targeted shared homes where they would round up men in one homestead. In some instances, it was also noted that those aligned to the movement for democratic change were also specifically targeted, for example, members of parliament, councillors, and other active members. Torture was perpetrated through beating the men with baton sticks on their backs while they lay on the ground, including falanga, that is beating under the feet and beating them with open hands. It is acknowledged that property, including a police station, police vehicles, and shops were destroyed and vandalized or looted, whilst barricades were placed on roads to stop people from going to work. This, however, did not justify torture of citizens by the security forces, as the right to freedom from torture is one right that cannot be derogated from under any circumstances. The Supreme Court of Zimbabwe, in the case of Justina Mukoko versus the Attorney General, judgment number 1112, emphasized that no exceptional circumstance such as the seriousness of the crime the person is suspected to having committed or the danger he or she is believed to cause to national security can justify infliction of torture or inhuman or degrading treatment. The amount of force evidenced by the injuries sustained by some of the complainants that were interviewed and the deaths that occurred, which were supported by medical records, reveal a case of police brutality. Police brutality is defined as the use of excessive and/or unnecessary force by the police when dealing with civilians. Excessive use of force means a force well beyond what would be necessary in order to handle a situation. From the above definition, it is clear that although excessive force is not subject to a precise definition, it is generally use of force beyond the force a reasonable and prudent law enforcement officer would use under the circumstances. Excessive force by law enforcement officers is a violation of a person's rights. The unleashing of live bullets on demonstrators and phalanga on some complainants are examples of excessive force that was used by the police, amounting to police brutality, often violating the right to life. Other methods of dispersing crowds, such as tear gas, rubber bullets, and water canisters, could have been used rather than the use of live bullets, which to any reasonable person have the potential of causing unnecessary death. In addition, the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission noted that the method of arrest and detention that was used by the police and soldiers amounted to arbitrary arrests and detention, a crackdown as opposed to law enforcement. Complainants informed the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission of how they were taken from their homes at night on the basis that they were males. The dragnet method did not take into consideration whether one was truly connected to the alleged offense. It is the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission's strong view that police should properly investigate cases and only arrest people that have committed the alleged offenses, as opposed to indiscriminately rounding up citizens and taking them to court without undertaking proper investigations. Right to privacy. The findings reveal that in the areas monitored, the police and soldiers entered into the homes, premises, and property of some of the complainants in the middle of the night without their permission. Their doors were broken into and their windows and doors were vandalized by police and the soldiers. This violated their right to privacy, which protects them from arbitrary searches of their homes and unlawful entry into their home, premises, or property under Section 57 of the Constitution. Right to personal liberty. The facts gathered from interviews held with communities reveal that the police and the soldiers indiscriminately targeted men in the residential areas merely due to proximity to the areas where barricades had been placed and shopping centers where looting and vandalism had taken place. Yet interviews with most stakeholders in the areas that were monitored revealed that those who had put barricades on the roads on 14th January 2019, or those who led the looting, did not even stay in the areas, and most were unknown to the communities. To conclude that every man living close to the looted shops or barricaded road were involved, and to proceed to conduct door-to-door searches for and arrest them on this basis led to a violation of personal liberty of men who had not been involved in the incident, including boys below the ages of 18. In the case of Stamboli versus Commissioner of Police 1989, 3 ZLR 287, it was held that the onus is upon the person making the arrest to prove that the arrest was lawfully justified. Further, it was held in the case of Miyambo versus Ngoma, Ikarira, and others that in order to establish the lawfulness of an arrest without a warrant, the onus lies upon the arresting authority to show probable cause or reasonable suspicion. In exercising the power of arrest, he must act as an ordinary honest man would act, on suspicions which have a reasonable basis, and not merely on wild suspicion. The arrester must act on such circumstances as would ordinarily lead to a reasonable man to form the suspicion that the arrestee has committed an offense. It is not the function of the police to arrest at large and to use the interrogatory process in order to determine whom to charge. The deprivation of personal liberty is an odious interference and constitutes a serious infraction of fundamental rights, attracting an exemplary assessment of reparation. The use of military details who do not have arresting powers in the arrests also led to the violation of the right to liberty in respect of the men arrested. Interviewed citizens narrated how the police were accompanied by armed soldiers as they undertook the door-to-door raids. During a court hearing at the Chitungwiza Magistrates Court, a police officer admitted that they were accompanied by armed soldiers during the home raids and at one point interrogated an 8-year-old girl who supposedly led them to some of the accused persons. The Commission remains concerned about the continued use of the military in maintaining law and order in the country. After the events of 1 August 2018, it was to be expected that the country would have learned something and would in future do things differently. From reports received to date, indications are that more citizens have died during the current protests than those who died during the August 1, 2018 protests. It is therefore disturbing to note that the deployment of the army in quelling civilian disturbances leads to loss of life and serious bodily injuries and other human rights violations. Yet the government continues to make such deployments. Right of pre-trial detainees. The Constitution also provides for the rights of accused persons in Section 70, which includes the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty, the right to be informed promptly of the charge in sufficient detail to enable them to answer it, the right to be given adequate time and facilities to prepare a defense, and the right to remain silent, and the right not to testify or to be compelled to give self-incriminating evidence. The Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission noted with concern that some of those arrested on 14 January 2019 had not appeared before a court within the required 48 hours. Lawyers representing accused persons complained that their clients were said to have been arrested on the 15th January 2019 to make it appear as if they had been taken to court within the confines of the law. Some of the relatives of detained juveniles who spoke to the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission in Chitungwiza and Mbare informed the Commission that they had been denied access to the detainees and access to information concerning the detainees in breach of the Constitution. The Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission will continue to monitor the situation in the country and provide updates to the country. The Commission will also continue to engage with various stakeholders with a view to ensuring that the promotion, protection, and enforcement of human rights in the country is upheld. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Commissioner Chirisari, and I am going to read the recommendations by the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission to the government of Zimbabwe. We make a call that the government of Zimbabwe respects the citizens' rights to demonstrate and to petition as provided for in Section 59 of the Constitution. The petition of the civilians was a petition on their civil rights to right to food and water, right to education, right to healthcare, right to citizens' dignity, which have been eroded by the happenings over the past few years, but also the general lack of national development. That is the constitutional mandate according to Section 13 of the duty bearers that will facilitate employment creation and other opportunities for the enjoyment of a prosperous and fulfilling livelihood for the citizens of Zimbabwe, according to Section 8, subsection 2. At the same time, the citizens of Zimbabwe are reminded that the right to demonstrate comes with the responsibility to ensure that the demonstrations are peaceful and that they do not lead to violations of the rights of others. The right to personal security has been seriously violated for business owners and also people with their personal properties that were destroyed, and that is a violation of Section 52, subsection A of our Constitution. Secondly, the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission calls upon government to take the lead in convening a platform for national dialogue with partners in all sectors, including captains of industry, labor unions, independent commissions, civil society, and the opposition parties and ordinary citizens in order to find a lasting solution to the prevailing economic challenges to ensure respect and observance of the fundamental human rights and freedoms, and in order to promote peace and security in the country. The Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission also appeals to the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission to facilitate healing and reconstruction of trust and credibility and other valuable virtues of democracy and national stability, where it is expected that the government will put in place a mechanism to ensure reparation, rehabilitation, and compensation for those that have been victims of military and police brutality. The use of live ammunition by the army, the continued use of live ammunition by the army and the police against unarmed civilians has been alluded to, is strongly condemned and must stop, because the loss of life and serious injuries among citizens is a gross violation of human rights, in particular the most fundamental of rights, the right to life, in Section 48 of our Constitution. Parliament must ensure the implementation of Section 210 of the Constitution by enacting a law for an effective and independent mechanism for receiving and investigating complaints from members of the public about misconduct on the part of members of the security forces and remedying any harm caused by such misconduct. We also call upon the government of Zimbabwe to make assurances of non-recurrence. Government must expedite the ratification of the Convention against torture and other cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment or punishment. The police are urged to properly investigate cases whenever uprisings occur or are alleged to have been committed, instead of using the crackdown and dragnet arrest of citizens, many of whom would not have been linked to the alleged offenses. I thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. There is the statement, and we will field some questions. Any of you may have some questions. We'll take a few, then allow responses. Yes.
Hi, John Wright from ITV News. Sheila, is there anything in the protests last Monday which justifies the crackdown by the army and the police. Is there anything at all in that which justifies what then took place, the backlash?
I think as a commission, we stand by investigating on our own. We cannot confirm that there was a justification or no justification, because as our statement is saying, we are still investigating reports that are coming to the commission for us to be able to say whether they were justified or not justified. But for now, what we are doing is receiving reports from people who are affected, and because they are still under investigation, we cannot say it was justified or not justified. We are still investigating.
But the beatings, the shootings, the arbitrary arrest, none of that is justified.
I think our statement has alluded to that. We have indicated that there are certain things that happened that were not justified, but we cannot conclusively say this or that for now. We need to investigate further as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe just to emphasize that regardless of what might have happened in terms of the looting of property and destruction of property, nothing justifies some of the methods that were used by the police and the army in dealing with civilians. In particular, we've condemned the use of torture to deal with the situation, and we've also condemned the use of live ammunition against civilians, because that amounts to the use of excessive force, which has got serious implications on citizens' right to life, as well as causing bodily harm to citizens. So in short, we are saying whatever happened, the police are required, after the alleged commission of an offense, to ensure that they investigate and only deal with those people that are allegedly directly linked to the commission of the offenses, follow due process, take the accused persons to courts, and ensure that the courts deal with those cases in the proper and legal way.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
On the issue of the police and access to victims while in police custody, you indicated that the police were ignorant of the nature of your duties and so forth. Do you think this is just ignorance, or maybe because this is something that they would always want to do? They know what is to be done, because the modus operandi has been the same for a decade of years now, even during Mugabe's rule.
On that case again, we concluded that police officers that were dealing with at that particular point in time might not have been clear about the mandate of the commission, because they were asking questions regarding the mandate of the commission. But maybe just to highlight that after the coming in of the new dispensation, the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission had managed to create a very good rapport or working relationship with the Zimbabwe Republic Police, and were able to access police cells and other police facilities on many occasions. And therefore, we might say that it also came as a surprise to the commission when we were not allowed to access police cells and access the arrested citizens during this particular time.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I forgot to say we can identify ourselves, then ask a question.
Okay, my name is Ruth Ndumawe. The failure by the government to...
From?
I'm a freelance.
Okay.
The failure by the government to ensure that the complaints mechanism as required in Section 210 is available. Do you think that it's because government is not willing, or what? Because it's now a number of years after the new constitution.
This is an issue that has been under discussion for quite some time now in the country, including from the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission. It's a recommendation that we've made before, especially after the events of the 1st of August 2018, to ensure that that part of the constitution is activated and the proper legislation to deal with the complaints mechanisms is put in place. We have heard at one point that government, through the Ministry of Defense, was in the process of working on a bill that would be presented to Parliament to ensure that we have that mechanism in place. So we hope that this is something that is being prioritized and that that mechanism will be in place as soon as possible, because we believe it's necessary and it's important for us to have that in place as a country.
Okay, another question. Your name, please.
John Kasim, Channel Africa, SABC. Before this press conference, have you had an opportunity to discuss what your findings with the government, police, army, or anyone else concerned? Because as we speak right now, some victims who were hospitalized but not under police detention, they've actually been raided and are now in police custody. It means maybe the crackdown is still going on, despite even such reports coming out. Have you spoken to them, and what have they said?
We have not had an opportunity to speak to government, but this is something that is in place at the moment. We are identifying the different ministries or departments within government that we should engage as the Commission after these findings. And this is something that is actually on our plan as we go forward.
Yes.
My name is Lucy Yasini. From your report, there's no reference to some of the hooliganism that is said to have been perpetrated by members of the ruling party. A case, an example is the Budiriro case where Gomo was moving around. Have you had such reports, or you haven't come across such people who are confirming such reports that the ruling party members, youth members, were also perpetrating violence but were left to go scot-free?
As a commission, we only rely on facts that we have gathered ourselves. Whilst we have had reports to that effect, when we're on the ground, we tried to get information relating to that incident, but unfortunately we didn't get any facts to corroborate or confirm that actually happened. And therefore, without that confirmation, it will be difficult for us as the commission to actually say this is what transpired or whether or not it happened.
But the investigation is ongoing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me.
I'll start with him, then I'll come to you.
It's okay.
Privilege Mshani, Deutsche Welle, the German International Broadcast. What would be your strongest recommendation? Because it seems the issue of excessive force, like you rightly said, from the August 1st shootings, seems to be recurring despite recommendations, even in the Motlanthe Commission report, that the issues of use of force need to be dealt with for the avoidance of recurring in the future.
I think, like our recommendations read as a commission, we strongly recommend that the government gives assurances to the people of Zimbabwe, assurances of non-recurrence, because that trust and that credibility needs to be rebuilt.
Thanks.
Okay, my name is Anna Chibamu. I write for newzimbabwe.com. I just to buttress on Lucy's point. We also saw some videos where people in civilian clothing, in plain clothes, were also holding AK-47s, and one was actually the video was taken whilst he was actually shooting at members of the public. Have you also, do you have such information?
Yes. Okay.
Yes, you go ahead.
Okay. Whilst we have the video footage and that information, we have not managed again to get hold of the alleged perpetrators or any other members of the public who have confirmed to us that that actually happened. But the video footage, as the commission, we do have. What remains for us is to find corroboration of what transpired, who the alleged perpetrator is, and whether or not any members of the public will be able to come forward to the commission as we continue with the investigations to enable us to identify that particular individual.
Okay.
Costa, just a follow-up to your question. Are there any observations that you have made, in particular from 263, Are there any observations that you have made in relation to that video that you think, that you believe are going to give you leads in terms of establishing the credentials of this person in civilian clothes who was holding an AK-47?
Beyond what we saw in the video, I think like anyone else who watched that particular video, we do not have any information at this point in time.
Just to follow up again, but I think I have seen also that video. There are police vehicles close to that person if you watch that video again. And I think that should give you also a lead to determine the credentials of the person who was in civilian holding an AK-47. That's why I'm asking. If you look at that video closely, you observe that there was a police vehicle in front of him and at the back of him. So I believe we expect an information that will tell us that we have got a lead from that video. I mean the usefulness of that footage.
I think what we can say is that we thank you for giving us that information. It might be something that we have missed, but we'll go through the video again and probably be able to get some information that will help the commission in that regard.
And for your own information, the commission works with stakeholders, national stakeholders, including yourselves. And this is where, with your further outreach, it would be useful for you to let the public know that where the commission is found and where they should go, the victims of such violence. Because we are still involved in our outreach programs, but your reach is wider. And such a strong partnership with the media itself would help.
Thank you. Any other? Are we okay now?
I'll just say, in short, you're appealing for people with information to come forward and help.
Correct. To come forward with the information.
But also not in connection with that particular case only, but we encourage members of the public who might have been victims of police brutality or the brutality by the army or any other forms of human rights violations to approach the commission so that we are able to investigate and assist members of the public as much as we can in terms of the mandate that we are given by the Constitution.
So if there are no further questions, we take this opportunity to thank you so much. Those of you who are not in too much of a hurry can join us for tea.
I have a few copies of the statement. Those who don't have, who will not get the statement, I will post them on your email in the next 30
Camilla. Yes. Which of you? That one in my glasses.
Hello viewers, my name is Anna Chibam. You've been watching newzimbabwe.com live press conference by the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission here in Harare. For more info or news on this press conference, you can go to our website, that is www.newzimbabwe.com. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.